What would you do if you discovered your spouse had stolen $60 million from a drug cartel and vanished without a trace? Carmen Martinez learned this answer at 5:47 a.m. on March 30, 2023, when her world exploded into fragments of disbelief and terror. Heavy boots thundered up marble steps of her Coral Gables mansion. Voices shouted commands through megaphones. Red and blue lights painted her bedroom walls in violent streaks of color. Two teenage children stumbled from their rooms, eyes wide with confusion, as federal agents flooded through doorways like a human tide. FBI. Search warrant. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were living a double life right under your nose? Carmen had kissed her husband goodbye just 18 hours earlier. Rodrigo had promised to be home for dinner, briefcase in hand, that familiar smile creasing his weathered face. A successful banker. A devoted father. A man who'd built everything from nothing. But federal agents weren't searching for a devoted father that morning. Agent Patricia Williams stepped through shattered glass, badge gleaming against her tactical vest. Behind her, forensic teams spread through rooms like surgical instruments, dismantling a life piece by piece. Bank records. Computer hard drives. Hidden safes nobody knew existed. Carmen's screams echoed off vaulted ceilings as reality crashed down around her. Her husband hadn't just disappeared. Rodrigo Martinez had committed one of the most audacious financial crimes in FBI history, stealing millions from people who kill for far less. Coral Reef National Bank's most trusted executive had become America's most wanted fugitive overnight. Not just any fugitive, a man who'd outsmarted both federal law enforcement and a Colombian drug cartel simultaneously. If you've ever wondered how far desperation can drive someone, hit that like button and let's explore this incredible true story of betrayal, greed, and a vanishing act that continues to baffle investigators today. How does an ordinary banker pull off such an extraordinary crime? How do you steal from killers and live to tell about it? Those answers begin in Miami's glittering financial district, where glass towers reflect more than just sunlight. They mirror secrets dark enough to destroy everything in their shadow. Success tasted like Cuban coffee and smelled like ocean breeze drifting through floor-to-ceiling windows on the 23rd floor. Rodrigo Martinez had earned every inch of that corner office view, climbing from junior loan officer to senior vice president of international banking over 8 grueling years. His father had worked construction sites until arthritis bent his spine. His mother cleaned hotel rooms until her hands cracked from industrial soap. First-generation Cuban-Americans who'd arrived with nothing but determination and faith in their son's potential. Every promotion Rodrigo earned felt like vindication of their sacrifice. Miami's financial district sparkled with opportunity for those willing to chase it. Glass towers reached toward azure skies, promising wealth beyond imagination for anyone smart enough to navigate complex international transactions. Currency exchanges. Investment portfolios. Cross-border wire transfers that moved millions with a few keystrokes. Coral Reef National Bank stood among Florida's most prestigious regional institutions, and Rodrigo had become its golden boy. Home meant something different entirely. Coral Gables mansions lined quiet streets where royal palms swayed in evening breezes. Children's laughter echoed from swimming pools. Tennis courts hosted weekend matches between neighbors who'd made their fortunes in real estate, technology, and finance. Carmen Martinez had built a life that magazine photographers would envy. Charity galas filled her calendar. School board meetings demanded her attention. Their teenage son excelled at lacrosse while their daughter earned straight A's in advanced placement courses. Weekend barbecues brought together other banking families whose children attended private academies and spent summers in European language camps. Family photos covered mahogany surfaces throughout their home. Vacation memories from Aspen ski trips. Anniversary dinners at exclusive restaurants. Graduation ceremonies and birthday celebrations captured in perfect digital clarity. Carmen had curated a life that looked flawless from every angle. Yet subtle changes had begun creeping into their routine. Rodrigo worked later hours, claiming international clients demanded attention across multiple time zones. Phone calls interrupted family dinners with increasing frequency. Business trips stretched longer than necessary. Cash appeared in their home safe, thick bundles of $100 bills that Rodrigo explained as performance bonuses. Carmen questioned their sudden affluence when luxury purchases began arriving without explanation. A Porsche Cayenne appeared in their driveway. country club memberships at exclusive venues, a boat moored at Miami Beach Marina. Rodrigo's explanations always sounded reasonable. Successful investments, quarterly bonuses, profitable client relationships. But nurses develop instincts about people in distress. Carmen had spent 15 years working pediatric emergency rooms, reading subtle signs that children couldn't articulate. Fear hiding behind brave smiles. Pain masked by defensive anger. She'd learned to trust those instincts when young lives depended on accurate assessments. Something felt wrong about her husband's increasing wealth and decreasing presence. Late-night phone conversations conducted in hushed Spanish. Bank statements that arrived in sealed envelopes, immediately filed away without discussion. Weekend work sessions that couldn't be interrupted under any circumstances. But what Carmen didn't know was that her husband's corner office held secrets that would destroy everything she held dear. International banking offers unique temptations to those with access and ambition. High-net-worth clients move money across borders for countless reasons, some legitimate, others decidedly less so. Rodrigo's department specialized in facilitating complex transactions that required discretion and expertise. Currency exchanges between countries with different banking regulations. Investment portfolios that needed careful structuring for tax optimization. Wire transfers that moved millions through correspondent banks across multiple continents. Gray areas exist in every profession, but international finance offers particularly murky territory where ethics become negotiable and moral boundaries blur. Ambition without ethical foundations transforms into corruption with frightening ease. Success becomes an addiction that demands increasingly dangerous fixes to maintain its high. Isabella Restrepo entered Coral Reef National Bank on a Tuesday morning in February 2019, her presence commanding attention without effort. Designer heels clicked against marble floors as she approached Rodrigo's assistant, speaking in accented English that carried authority and charm in equal measure. "Mr. Martinez? I represent Palmetto Holdings, LLC. We require sophisticated banking services for our expanding operations." Her business cards featured embossed logos and premium cardstock. Documentation arrived in leather portfolios, each page meticulously prepared by expensive attorneys. Palmetto Holdings presented itself as a legitimate real estate investment company with import-export operations spanning Colombia, Panama, and South Florida. Property development ventures. Construction projects. Tourism investments requiring substantial capital movement between countries. Isabella dressed like wealth itself, tailored suits that whispered Italian craftsmanship, jewelry that caught light without screaming for attention. Her knowledge of international banking impressed even seasoned professionals. She understood correspondent banking relationships, foreign exchange hedging strategies, and regulatory compliance requirements across multiple jurisdictions. Most importantly, she understood exactly what ambitious bankers wanted to hear. "Your reputation for discretion precedes you, Mr. Martinez. Our clients value privacy above all else. We're willing to pay premium fees for premium service." Premium fees meant substantial bonuses. Bonuses meant recognition from senior management. Recognition meant career advancement in an industry where success measured itself in dollars moved and relationships cultivated. What Rodrigo didn't realize was that Isabella represented far more than real estate investments. Serpiente Cartel had perfected their approach over decades of successful money laundering operations. They studied potential targets for months before making contact. Background checks. Financial analysis. Psychological profiling that identified weaknesses and motivations. Ambitious executives with expensive tastes and growing families made ideal candidates. Men who'd climbed from modest backgrounds often carried chip-on-shoulder attitudes about deserving more than their current positions provided. Pride mixed with insecurity created perfect vulnerability for expert manipulation. Isabella's initial requests seemed perfectly reasonable. Wire transfers between legitimate business accounts. Currency exchanges for international transactions. Investment portfolio management requiring careful timing and routing through established correspondent banks. Everything appeared above board to casual inspection. But gradually, requests became more complex. Specific timing requirements for transfers. Particular routing through certain correspondent banks rather than others. Creative structuring to optimize tax efficiency across multiple jurisdictions. Each accommodation seemed like minor deviation from standard procedures. Rodrigo found himself making small compromises without fully understanding their cumulative impact. Approving transfers outside normal business hours. Expediting documentation that might ordinarily require additional verification. Accepting explanations that satisfied legal requirements while ignoring obvious questions about underlying business purposes. 18 months of careful grooming transformed Rodrigo from cautious banker into willing collaborator. Weekly transfers grew from hundreds of thousands to millions. Bonus payments appeared in his personal accounts, appreciation for exceptional service that Isabella explained as standard practice for high-value client relationships. By late 2020, Rodrigo was facilitating transfers totaling $2 to $3 million every week. His lifestyle upgraded accordingly. Luxury vehicles. Exclusive memberships. Investment properties that Carmen believed represented smart financial planning rather than criminal proceeds. Small moral compromises snowballed into major ethical violations without any single decision feeling catastrophic. Each step seemed reasonable given previous accommodations. Each rationalization built upon earlier justifications until criminal activity felt like sophisticated business practice. Can you imagine being slowly pulled into this web of deception? Comment below. At what point would you have walked away? Carmen's nursing instincts continued sending warning signals that her husband chose to ignore. Direct confrontations about their sudden wealth produced increasingly elaborate explanations. Performance bonuses. Investment returns. Client appreciation gifts that Rodrigo insisted were standard practice in international banking. Where does all this money come from? Carmen demanded during one particularly heated argument. I work with wealthy clients who appreciate discretion, Rodrigo replied, his tone suggesting she should be grateful rather than suspicious. This is how international banking works at my level. But nurses don't easily accept explanations that contradict observable evidence. Carmen knew her husband was lying, even if she couldn't prove it. Little did Rodrigo know, every transaction was being watched by someone far more dangerous than any cartel. March arrived in Miami with humidity that clung to expensive suits and promises that would destroy lives. Carlos Vega chose Cipriani downtown for their meeting. Neutral territory where wealthy men discussed business over $20 cocktails and $100 steaks. Lunch crowds provided perfect camouflage for conversations that couldn't happen in bank offices or cartel safe houses. Vega appeared exactly as Isabella had described. Soft-spoken, refined, carrying himself like a university professor rather than a drug kingpin. His gray hair was perfectly styled, his suit Italian, his demeanor more befitting a Fortune 500 CEO than a criminal mastermind. Only his eyes betrayed anything dangerous, calculating intelligence that missed nothing and forgave less. Mr. Martinez, Vega began, his English flawless but carrying traces of Colombian accent. Isabella speaks highly of your professionalism. I have a proposition that could benefit us both substantially. Rodrigo sipped his espresso, trying to project confidence while his heart hammered against his ribs. 2 years of smaller transactions had led to this moment. Sitting across from El Arquitecto himself, about to hear an offer that would change everything. Increased law enforcement pressure in Colombia requires us to consolidate certain assets quickly, Vega continued. $60 million currently dispersed across various accounts needs temporary housing before final transfer to more permanent locations. $60 million. Rodrigo's annual salary barely reached $200,000, yet this man spoke about $60 million like others discussed weekend plans. We need someone with legitimate banking credentials to facilitate these transfers. Someone we trust. Someone with proven discretion. Vega's smile never reached his eyes. Your compensation would be $2 million. More than you'd earn in 5 years at your current position. Vega outlined his plan with mathematical precision. Rodrigo would create shell companies and temporary accounts using his banking authority. Deposits would arrive in carefully staged installments over 2 weeks, never staying in any single account longer than 48 hours. Money would transfer through predetermined routing systems so complex that forensic accountants would struggle to follow paper trails. By the time anyone notices irregularities, funds will have reached their final destinations, Vega assured him. No evidence will link you to these transactions. You'll simply be processing legitimate business transfers for established clients. $2 million. Enough to pay off their mortgage. Fund both children's college educations. Provide financial security that would last decades. All for 2 weeks of careful coordination and a few dozen wire transfers. But in that upscale Brickell restaurant, Rodrigo Martinez made a decision that would make him one of America's most wanted fugitives. Greed has a peculiar way of blinding intelligent people to obvious dangers. Rodrigo convinced himself this opportunity represented justice, compensation for years of underpayment while generating millions in fees for Coral Reef National Bank. He deserved this windfall. His family deserved financial security. $2 million wasn't really stealing. It was finally receiving fair value for his expertise and discretion. Rationalization became his specialty during sleepless nights leading up to the operation. Every risk seemed manageable. Every potential problem had solutions. Vega's plan appeared foolproof because Rodrigo needed it to be foolproof. Desperation and ambition created perfect conditions for catastrophic decision-making. Warning signs that should have triggered immediate alarm instead became minor inconveniences to overcome. Why did Vega need such complex routing systems if everything was legitimate? Why couldn't normal banking channels handle these transfers? Why offer such enormous compensation for supposedly routine transactions? Questions that might have saved his life went unasked because Rodrigo had already decided what he wanted to hear. What neither Vega nor Rodrigo knew was that their carefully planned operation had been compromised before it began. Operation Coral Snake, a joint task force between FBI, DEA, and Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, had been monitoring Serpiente cartel communications for 8 months. Agent Patricia Williams and her team had identified banking patterns across multiple Miami institutions, tracking unusual transaction volumes and suspicious routing systems. Williams had spent 15 years investigating financial crimes, developing instincts that recognized money laundering operations from subtle statistical anomalies. Coral Reef National Bank's international transaction volumes had increased by 340% over 18 months, growth patterns that screamed criminal activity to experienced investigators. Federal surveillance teams had been photographing restaurant meetings, recording phone conversations, and analyzing every wire transfer flowing through Rodrigo's department. They knew about Isabella. They knew about Vega. They knew about Palmetto Holdings and 24 other shell companies in the Serpiente network. What they didn't anticipate was how quickly their carefully planned April arrests would need to accelerate when $60 million suddenly entered the equation. Williams received word of the massive transfer operation on March 28. Her team had 48 hours to prevent $60 million in drug proceeds from disappearing into untraceable offshore accounts. But Rodrigo Martinez was about to prove that even the FBI could be outmaneuvered by desperate ambition and perfect timing. March 29, 2023. 7:43 p.m. Rodrigo's phone buzzed while he reviewed final transfer authorizations in his home office. Unknown number. Voice distortion software masked the caller's identity, but the message cut through electronic static with crystal clarity. The FBI is coming. You have 2 hours. Click. Dial tone. Silence that felt like falling off a cliff. 2 weeks of flawless execution had moved $58 million through his predetermined routing system. Only $2 million remained in the temporary account he'd created under Meridian Investment Solutions, LLC. Final transfers to Vega's Swiss and Cayman accounts should have taken 30 minutes. Routine keystrokes that would complete the operation and deposit $2 million in compensation into his personal accounts. But someone inside the Serpiente organization had spotted surveillance, or received their own warning, or decided that Rodrigo made a convenient scapegoat for the entire operation. Standing in his mahogany-paneled office, surrounded by family photos and banking awards, Rodrigo faced an impossible choice. Complete the transfers as planned and hope the warning was false. Run immediately and leave $60 million behind. Or the nuclear option crystallized in his mind with terrifying clarity. Why should he sacrifice everything to protect Carlos Vega's money? Why should he face federal prison while the cartel relocated their operations to other cities? Why should his family lose their home, their security, their future because he'd been caught facilitating someone else's crimes? Rodrigo's fingers moved across his keyboard with surgical precision. Account numbers he'd memorized during months of careful preparation. Cayman Island banks. Swiss financial institutions. Bitcoin wallets hosted on servers scattered across multiple continents. Routing systems he'd studied obsessively, understanding exactly how to make money disappear into digital mist. Transfer authorization: $2 million from Meridian Investment Solutions to account 8472291B, First Cayman National Bank. Transfer authorization: $58 million from Serpiente consolidation accounts to cryptocurrency exchange portfolio 7749 Alpha Delta. Confirmation codes flashed across his screen like digital fireworks. $60 million vanished from Carlos Vega's carefully planned operation and reappeared in accounts that only Rodrigo could access. Money that belonged to a Colombian drug cartel now belonged to a desperate banker with 2 hours to disappear forever. But Rodrigo Martinez had been preparing for this possibility since his first compromise 18 months earlier. Paranoia and ambition had created contingency plans that would make professional spies envious. False Costa Rican passport bearing the name Rafael Sandoval, complete with entry stamps from multiple countries. Cash reserves totaling $300,000 hidden in safety deposit boxes across Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Tampa. Cryptocurrency wallets configured for maximum anonymity. Contact networks developed through international banking relationships. People who moved money for wealthy clients without asking uncomfortable questions. In that moment, Rodrigo Martinez ceased to exist, and Rafael Sandoval was born. Carmen and the children slept peacefully upstairs while their husband and father systematically erased his digital existence. Bank account transfers. Email deletions. Social media profiles wiped clean. Phone records purged through contacts who specialized in such services. Even security camera footage from his building's parking garage mysteriously disappeared thanks to a maintenance worker whose gambling debts had made him surprisingly cooperative. At 9:15 p.m., Rodrigo kissed his sleeping wife's forehead and whispered words she would never remember. "I'm sorry for everything that's coming." Then he walked downstairs, climbed into his Porsche Cayenne, and drove toward Miami International Airport's long-term parking garage. Section G7 offered broken security cameras and minimal lighting, details he'd verified during 3 separate reconnaissance visits. His Porsche would sit undiscovered for weeks, providing investigators with false leads about his initial escape route. Meanwhile, a taxi waited outside Terminal C to transport Rafael Sandoval to Fort Lauderdale Marina. Captain Antonio Vasquez operated charter fishing boats for wealthy clients who valued discretion above legal compliance. His 38-foot cigarette racing boat could reach the Bahamas in 4 hours, carrying passengers who preferred avoiding customs inspections. Cash payments ensured that passenger manifests remained deliberately incomplete. By 11:30 p.m., Rafael Sandoval was in international waters, watching Miami's skyline shrink into twinkling lights on a dark horizon. $60 million existed as encrypted data flowing through fiber optic cables beneath Atlantic Ocean waves. A man who had been Rodrigo Martinez 12 hours earlier now possessed one of history's largest single-person thefts from organized crime. What's more shocking, that he betrayed the cartel, or that he abandoned his family? Let me know in the comments. Dawn broke over Coral Gables with federal agents surrounding the Martinez family home. Carmen woke to pounding fists and shouted commands, her world exploding into fragments of disbelief and terror. Her children stumbled from their bedrooms, eyes wide with confusion as tactical teams flooded through doorways like a human tsunami. "Where is Rodrigo Martinez?" Agent Williams demanded, her badge gleaming against tactical gear. "At work," Carmen stammered, checking her phone for messages that would never come. "He left for the office yesterday morning. He always comes home for dinner." But Rodrigo's office sat empty, his computer wiped clean, his personal effects gone. $60 million had vanished along with South Florida's most trusted banker, leaving behind only questions and a family whose lives would never recover from his choices. Agent Patricia Williams stared at computer screens displaying the most sophisticated financial crime she'd encountered in 15 years of federal service. 23 shell companies spanning 7 countries. 14 different bank accounts across multiple jurisdictions. $40 million converted into various cryptocurrencies using mixing services designed to obscure transaction trails. 20 million more transferred through offshore banking networks so complex that forensic accountants were still mapping connections 2 years later. Rodrigo Martinez hadn't just stolen money, he'd demonstrated technical expertise that suggested months of preparation and possibly inside assistance from IT personnel. Bank security footage revealed late-night access to computer terminals belonging to other employees. Digital forensics uncovered administrative privileges far beyond his authorized clearance levels. Either he developed sophisticated hacking capabilities or corrupted additional bank staff to facilitate his escape. Williams assembled a task force that included cybercrime specialists, international banking experts, and cryptocurrency analysts. Their investigation stretched across 4 continents, following digital breadcrumbs through regulatory frameworks designed to protect financial privacy rather than facilitate law enforcement. Every lead spawned 3 new questions. Every breakthrough revealed additional layers of complexity. He was a banker, not a criminal mastermind, Williams often told colleagues. Yet somehow he executed one of history's most sophisticated financial disappearances. Federal resources that should have been tracking terrorism financing and international drug cartels instead focused on one desperate man's perfect crime. Carmen Martinez lost everything except her children's love and her own determination to survive. Federal asset forfeiture claimed their Coral Gables mansion, luxury vehicles, boat, and investment accounts. Bank investigators froze joint savings and checking accounts pending criminal proceedings that might continue for years. Threats arrived within days of Rodrigo's disappearance. Anonymous phone calls in Spanish promising violence against his family. Whether these came from cartel associates or federal informants seeking leverage remained unclear, but Carmen couldn't risk her children's safety on government protection that felt increasingly inadequate. She sold her jewelry, emptied college funds, and relocated to a modest apartment in Jacksonville under assumed names. Hospital administrators who'd once respected her nursing expertise now viewed her with suspicion. Background checks revealed her connection to one of FBI's most wanted fugitives. Employment opportunities evaporated despite her clean criminal record and 15 years of exemplary medical service. Her teenage children adapted to new schools, new identities, new realities where their father's crimes followed them like toxic shadows. College scholarships disappeared when admissions committees discovered their family connection. Friends abandoned relationships that felt dangerous or embarrassing. Simple activities like opening bank accounts or applying for jobs required explanations they preferred not to give. Carmen received occasional postcards from various countries bearing only the message, "I'm safe," in handwriting she recognized. No return addresses. No contact information. No explanations or apologies for destroying lives he'd claimed to love more than his own. Coral Reef National Bank faced federal sanctions, congressional investigations, and class action lawsuits from shareholders whose investments had funded criminal operations. Regulatory agencies imposed millions in fines for compliance failures that enabled money laundering. Customer confidence evaporated as news coverage detailed how easily international criminals had infiltrated their systems. Within 18 months, financial pressures forced merger with a larger institution. Century-old reputation for conservative banking practices couldn't survive association with organized crime. Dozens of employees lost positions when redundant departments were eliminated. Retirement accounts vanished. Career advancement opportunities disappeared as the Martinez scandal tainted everyone associated with international banking operations. Carlos Vega's response defied law enforcement expectations entirely. Rather than unleashing retribution in Miami, Serpiente Cartel simply evaporated. Within 48 hours of discovering their stolen funds, every known associate had vanished from South Florida. Businesses were abandoned. Apartments left empty. Criminal networks that had operated successfully for over a decade disappeared like morning mist. Intelligence sources later suggested that Vega viewed Rodrigo's theft as evidence of systemic compromise rather than individual betrayal. FBI surveillance capabilities had clearly penetrated their organization deeper than anyone realized. Rather than risk further exposure, they relocated operations to cities where law enforcement attention seemed less focused. Actions create consequences that ripple far beyond their perpetrators, destroying innocent lives and institutions that took decades to build. One man's criminal choices had eliminated an entire criminal organization while simultaneously devastating a legitimate bank, a loving family, and dozens of careers built through honest work. 27 months later, Rodrigo Martinez remains among FBI's most wanted fugitives. Sightings have been reported across 4 continents: Costa Rica, Panama, Argentina, Thailand, but none confirmed through forensic verification. His family continues receiving postcards with rotating postmarks and familiar handwriting, containing only those haunting words, "I'm safe." But cryptocurrency analysis reveals a more complex truth. Bitcoin addresses associated with his theft show regular activity patterns suggesting active management rather than dormant storage. Mixing services designed to obscure transaction histories process portions of his stolen fortune every few months. Digital forensics teams track wallet-to-wallet transfers that follow sophisticated laundering protocols clearly designed by someone with intimate knowledge of blockchain technology. Recent activity occurred just 6 months ago. Transactions totaling $3 million moved through exchanges in Singapore, Switzerland, and the Seychelles before disappearing into privacy coins that resist government tracking. Either Rodrigo has become a cryptocurrency expert, or he's receiving assistance from professionals who specialize in digital asset management for clients requiring absolute anonymity. Facial recognition software scans airport security footage across dozens of countries, searching for matches that never materialize. International banking compliance systems monitor suspicious transaction patterns that might indicate his presence. Interpol coordinates with law enforcement agencies worldwide, following leads that consistently prove false. Yet somewhere in this connected world, a former banker manages $60 million in stolen assets while evading capture by multiple federal agencies and revenge from one of South America's most dangerous criminal organizations. Agent Williams faces retirement knowing that her most significant case remains unsolved. Hundreds of criminals have been successfully prosecuted during her distinguished career, but Rodrigo Martinez represents the one who got away. Sometimes I wonder if he's actually dead, she admits privately. But those cryptocurrency movements suggest otherwise. He's out there, living comfortably on money that cost too many people everything they had. Her frustration echoes through federal law enforcement agencies where the Martinez case has become legendary. Proof that even ordinary people can execute extraordinary crimes when desperation meets opportunity and careful planning. What do you think happened to Rodrigo Martinez? Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more incredible true crime stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust, family, and the lengths people will go to escape their choices. Betrayal carries a price that extends far beyond its immediate victims. Carmen Martinez rebuilds her life one day at a time, carrying scars that will never fully heal. Her children navigate young adulthood burdened by their father's legacy. Bank employees lost careers they'd spent decades building. Criminal organizations relocated operations, affecting law enforcement efforts across multiple jurisdictions. Trust, once shattered, creates fragments that cut everyone who tries to piece them back together. Financial institutions now scrutinize international transactions with paranoid intensity. Families question whether they truly know their loved ones. The Martinez case changed how people think about the masks we wear and the secrets we keep. Sometimes the perfect crime isn't so perfect after all, or is it?